Hello, it's Polish Pol VR, welcome to the channel. Just a quick update from me. One of my favorite train sim games, Open World Derail Valley, a game which I covered a few years ago on the channel, but since then keep getting updates. Just received massive, and I mean massive update, introducing brand new cities, brand new cargo types, brand new pickups, just everything, a lot. It plays for you in the background. There's a lot to take in, but thankfully the developers posted a very nice video, 25 minutes long, because that's how big the update is. So I let you watch it. If you didn't play this game, it's out on PC. You can play it flat, or of course, as we like to play it, in virtual reality. And it's just super fun. Started off quite a simple game, but yet enjoyable, and now it's, after all the years of development, it's hard. It's a massive open world train sim game that is just pleasure to play. A lot to do. It's not just driving trains, there's a lot to do, and even when you drive in trains, there's a lot to do to keep you occupied. Super awesome fun game. Check out this update. If you didn't pick it up. I'll be back later on with some more news, and for now that's it. Bye 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 bye.
The Northeast Mine alone. While these new industries don't introduce any novel cargo types, the old ones do. We've added 16 new cargo types for you to transport, ranging from more food, waste, vehicles, military equipment, and others. Now totaling at exactly 100 cargo types, the game's expanded supply chain makes many new connections between stations possible. To help streamline that, we've also modified some tracks and intersections, and even included new routes and shortcuts. These three elements, the new industries, new cargo types, and new tracks, all come together to make the supply chain more fun. Finally, you're able to head for a distant location and seamlessly make numerous pickups and deliveries along the way, ending up with a significant profit without needing to take the same old beaten path. Moreover, this will be further improved with several more industries coming in the next builds, as well as the eventual dynamic supply and demand simulation. To deliver the more sensitive types of cargo, you now need to have the Fragile license. It's intended as one of the early game goals, costing only $10,000, and makes a good investment because even though it bumps up the copay a little, the Fragile orders now also pay more. For highly expensive but sensitive cargo, such as trams, this can be rather lucrative. This build also introduces a new car type to the game, a closed hopper, which is used to deliver grains and flour from the farm. We've entirely redesigned the schematic maps. They are now more informative about station facilities, such as water towers and locomotive spawn points. The maps also better represent the stations in terms of proportions, now more closely matching their actual top-down shape. The yard orientations are more coherent, and the compass icon matches the handheld compass needle, with all of this hopefully making navigation more manageable for beginners. The main reason for the map redesign is a whole new feature: the remote operation of switches. This can save a lot of time when shunting, especially in realistic difficulty where a lot of walking would be involved, and it makes the experience generally more immersive and seamless. While this can be of great help, it's also intentionally made not too easy to use. Human error is essential to the Derail Valley experience, so if you want to change switches remotely, you'll still need to dedicate some mental capacity to understand the switch path at any given time. Remote switching using schematic maps is not available immediately from the start of the game. Rather, you must unlock this ability by buying the dispatcher license that costs, again, $10,000. While the schematic maps show all the switches within stations, we've also added an item named route map, which shows switches from the rest of the network. These switches can be remotely operated too. In addition to the three new industries, we've added a new city too, City South. This touristic place, featuring a beautiful promenade, is also home to the all-new Derail Valley Railway Museum. This is a new type of building that you can gain access to by buying the new museum license, which costs $15,000. The museum has a collection of 6 rather special locomotive variants, the so-called demonstrators. These are pre-production locomotives that the manufacturer would typically send to a railway company for demonstration and evaluation. In the past, the Derail Valley Railworks and Transportation Company received demonstrators too, before ordering the fleets of locomotives that we see in stations today. Their demonstrators were then given to the museum. However, as the Derail Valley economy plummeted in the meantime, the museum and its vehicles were highly neglected. Buying the museum license gives you the option to restore this historical collection and use the demonstrators as your personal vehicles. They look different, never despawn, can be permanently customized the way you like, and more than anything, motivate you to earn money even after you've unlocked all the licenses. Now, those benefits sound great, but it takes a lot of effort to restore a demonstrator. First, you must find one, re-rail it, and tow it back to the museum. Then you must fit it with missing parts, repair and refuel it, before finally giving it a paint job. The whole process takes quite a bit of time and money to do, and can be tracked at each locomotive's info panel. Note that demonstrators are not covered by the DVRT insurance package like regular locomotives, so when you use them you'll have to pay for all of their maintenance. Now, we're already familiar with how to do rerailing, towing and manual servicing, but what about those missing parts? That's right, each one of these abandoned locomotives has missing parts that you need to order from the museum's own office and bring using one of the two new types of work trains called utility vehicles. Utility flat car comes bundled with the museum. It can be hauled just like any other car, but it can only transport train parts. Then, there's also the much cooler utility rail vehicle. This is a diesel mechanical manual transmission rail bus chopped into a flatbed shape for transporting train parts. While it's not powerful enough to do any serious hauling, it is very fun to drive and fast, which makes it also suitable as personal transport. The utility rail vehicle does not come with the museum. Rather, you need to unlock it separately from a garage just nearby. Once you've ordered the train part, you need to bring one of the utility vehicles to a specified loading track to load it. This is done using the cargo transfer machine like you would for regular deliveries. Then, transfer the part to the museum to unload it and pay for it to be installed. Once you've serviced the locomotive, you can give it a paint job at the museum's paint station. This is done using the paint sprayer gun, which can be loaded with different types of cans that you can buy in shops. Sand cans are used to remove paint from the vehicles before they can be painted with paint cans. B99 we've included two types of paint cans, which are essentially themes, DVRT and Demonstrator. The more affordable DVRT cans will paint vehicles to the DVL Valley Railways and Transportation colors that we are all familiar with, but giving them a pristine look. The more expensive Demonstrator cans will instead paint the vehicles to the unique paint jobs that these historical pieces originally came with. The body and cab of a locomotive need to be painted separately, so two cans are needed to complete the vehicle, and you are allowed to mix them. Lastly, as you would expect, painting can only be done on the museum locomotives. DVRT rolling stock is out of your reach in this regard. Other privately owned vehicles might become paintable too in future builds. Now, for all this restoration business to make sense, there's something more. The main addition in B99, and what makes it truly a major update, are the newly added gadgets. Gadgets are various pieces of equipment that you can buy and install to locomotives to enhance their usage. There are 20 types of gadgets in this build, plus the numerous color variants. Some of them alter locomotive behavior, some change the driving experience or make the locomotive safer, while others exist to better the lighting, help store your items more conveniently, or for various other purposes. Where you place the gadgets and how you use them is entirely up to you. One of the very useful gadgets, for example, is the distance tracker. It lets you know exactly when the end of your train has passed a certain point without needing to leave the cab. This in combination with remote switching using schematic maps, makes a lot of rail operation smoother and more fun. Gadgets, like regular items, are bought in shops around the map and can be pricey. In fact, there's 60 new items available in shops, tripling the previous amount. Because of this, we've entirely redesigned the shops too, now looking a lot more like actual stores full of products, with all purchasable items sitting on the shelves in their physical form. The gadgets you buy can be installed to DVRT locomotives. However, if the locomotive despawns, the gadgets from it will go to Lost and Found. Since gadgets cost time and money to install, that is not ideal. This is where the museum locomotives come into place. When you own a private locomotive, you can safely customize it all you want, and the gadgets inside it will never despawn. Since you are a trainee engineer in the Rail Valley, we didn't want you to just slap on gadgets and call it a day. Instead, the installation process is highly interactive, where you actually need to secure mounts, solder connections, do some electrical wiring, and tweak the gadget settings to your needs before you can use them. Let's go into these steps one by one. First, to install a gadget, you need to fit it to an appropriate mount. You can usually find the fitting mount just by eyeballing its size. Mounts exist in different shapes so that they can be placed on different types of surfaces. Once you place the mount where you want it, you can secure it in two ways, either using an electric handrail or duct tape. Drill mounts are highly durable, but can only be done on select surfaces. Taped mounts, on the other hand, can be placed anywhere, but the train collision will knock them off. Once the mount is secured, you can attach the gadget to it in an orientation of your choice. If the gadget requires electricity, you'll need to connect it to the electrical supply using the soldering gun. Finally, optionally, if you choose to install any controllers that let you toggle gadgets on and off, you can use the crimping tool to wire them up, and this way further customize the usage to your liking. You can even make ditch lights by wiring up headlight gadgets with an alternating controller, for example. If at any point you need to remove gadgets and mounts, you can nudge them with the hammer and they'll safely fall off. You can then repair any remaining drill holes using the filler gun. To install gadgets, you clearly need a lot of equipment at hand. Tools, mounts, gadgets, you name it. So, instead of making you carry all that with you, we've expanded the functionality of what used to be known as a Lost and Found shed to what's now called a tool shed. While the desk inside still serves as a place where your lost items will spawn, the rest of the shed is now a permanent item storage unit. You can neatly arrange a wide variety of items in the shed, and that's exactly where you'll find them the next time around. Being an engineer in the game, we also wanted to encourage you to stick to one gadget layout rather than changing it on a whim. The way this is accomplished is that to solder electrical connections, you need to consume a soldering wire reel. A single reel costs $200, which isn't too bad considering the Rail Valley economy, but the costs will add up if you make repeated changes. Now, of course, if you want to mess around with this stuff without any costs, you can do so in sandbox mode. Installed gadgets can be interacted with from the external view too, using the new driving UI extensions. Before we move on to topics beyond items, we've added a few more. Flag markers in many colors that can be used to help visualize particular train cuts, for example, and the handheld gaming console. The Bill 99 adds significant improvements to the train simulation too. In particular, our goal was to finish everything that remained to be done regarding steam engines, so let's dive right into it. Steam engines are now significantly more complete and behave closer to how they would in real life. To start with, coal combustion has received a notable rework. Some of this was already done in the previous build, but it's important enough to recap here too. When you think of coal particles leaving the firebox in the form of smoke, you probably think of them as being fully burned. However, that's not necessarily always the case. The coal can burn inefficiently, where it releases particles to the atmosphere which still have unused energy in them. You may already be familiar with the smoke color being a good indicator of combustion efficiency, and well, the black smoke is black because it literally contains unburned coal particles. So there's two factors involved in combustion efficiency. One is the amount of coal in the firebox, and the other is the availability of air. When there's little coal in the firebox, regular air from the atmosphere is enough for it to burn efficiently. However, add more coal and you'll suffocate the combustion. The coal will now burn faster, but it will not generate proportionally more heat. What it needs is more air. One way to increase the airflow is by using the blower. The blower gently releases steam from the boiler to the atmosphere, which creates a vacuum in the firebox, drawing in fresh air. This is a good way to improve the combustion efficiency when the vehicle is parked. However, when the vehicle is accelerating or maintaining a high speed, the vacuum created by the rapid exhaustion of cylinders is even greater. In this case, we should keep the blower closed and add more coal to the firebox to use the available airflow to its fullest potential. For fine-tuning of the coal level, we recommend using the Expert Shovel, which you can buy at the goods factory. Next up, we've greatly expanded the time it takes to heat up the steam engine boiler from scratch. Rather than having to sit it out, there's no new tasks for you to do to prepare the locomotive for running. Previously, to lubricate the running gear, you simply needed to open a single valve. That valve is now gone, and you need to do a couple of new things. Let's start with the automatic lubricator. The role of the automatic lubricator is to maintain oil level in the bearings. It does this by adding a little bit of oil with every cycle of the running gear. When the oil is already in the bearings and the vehicle is in motion, the oil level remains high. However, if the vehicle is sitting still, the bearings will eventually dry out. This means that a locomotive that hasn't been driven in a while needs to be lubricated manually. For bearings that are within reach of the automatic lubricator, this is done by cranking a handle on the lubricator until the oil level in the bearings is full. However, there are also bearings that the automatic lubricator can't reach, and they too need tending. You'll find several of these oil cups distributed around the locomotives. If you open the cap, the oil level inside is presented to you. Using the new item called Oiler, which you can buy at any shop, you can refill these cups. Make sure to fill them all. Remember to close the caps, or as soon as the vehicle is in motion, the bearings will dry out very soon. If you miss to lubricate any of these bearings, you'll quickly know because the locomotive will start producing screeching noise and take damage when it's put into motion. Moving on, the steam chest simulation has been revamped and now significantly improves the experience of driving steam engines. When the regulator of a steam engine is open, steam is emitted from the boiler to the locomotive's chest. It is from here that steam is further supplied to the cylinders. Steam in the cylinders then pushes the pistons, which leads to the wheels turning and propelling the vehicle. The novelty in this build is that when there's steam in the chest, even after you close the regulator, it will continue propelling the vehicle. Normally, the chest will empty in a few exhaust cycles already. However, if you keep the regulator open just enough to keep making up for that loss, the chest pressure can be maintained at a relatively constant level. But there's a catch. The faster the locomotive is moving, the more frequently it exhausts steam from its cylinders. This is where the cutoff valve comes into play. By gradually closing the cutoff by moving it towards the center position, we reduce the period in which chest steam is admitted to the cylinders, thus also we reduce the exhaustion rate. While this results in less power, it will give the chest enough time to remain pressurized and still be able to propel the vehicle even at higher speeds. While this principle has been simulated in the past, it was never as accurate and tangible as it is now. You'll find that driving the steam engines after this change feels quite different and is even more engaging. While on the topic of cutoff, be aware that setting it in the opposite direction of travel will now cause ash from the firebox to be sucked into the cylinders. Even over a short period of time, this can cause massive damage. Other notable improvements to steam engines include the more realistic looking and behaving side glasses. There's also now a blowback effect. This is a hazardous event that occurs when you enter a tunnel with the fire door open, thus you should always aim to keep the fire door closed. The improvements to steam engines also include better sounds, particle effects, and many more. Train brake systems are also significantly changed in this build. To start with, like in real life, all locomotives now have a brake cutout valve. The purpose of this valve is to isolate excess brake controls in a train that has more than one locomotive. When mixing locomotives with self-lapping and non-self-lapping valves in the same train, just make sure only one of the locomotives has their brake cutout open. As I'm sure you'll find out, a common mistake is to forget to open the cutout valve on a locomotive when starting. This can result in no braking ability. Train brakes in general have been reworked. The cars now properly simulate auxiliary reservoirs, which take significantly more time to fill up when a train is coupled initially than they did before. Once the reservoirs are full, releasing the brakes is much quicker than it used to be. One of the notable results of these changes can be seen in how the non-self-lapping brake operates. Previously, you were able to freely apply and release the brake, and at any point if you put the control to the lapping position, it would maintain whatever pressure the brake had at that moment. Now, the lapping position will behave the same only if you apply the brakes in return to the lapping position. If you release the brakes, however, and go back to the lapping position too soon, the cylinders will start pressurizing, effectively applying brakes. This is because, in order to lap successfully, the non-self-lapping brakes require all the auxiliary reservoirs to be fully pressurized, and this takes time. In practice, this means that you don't want to be releasing brakes too often. If you know you'll need to brake again soon, try to brake a smaller amount but continually, rather than applying and releasing brakes too frequently. After each release, you'll need to wait about 10 seconds or more, depending on how hard you were braking, before you can lap the brakes again. The brake sounds themselves are a lot more fulfilling now, with all cars in the train hissing and humming as they move the air around. We've made some improvements to couplers too. You can now tow cars even without tightening the screw. Beware, however, that this will increase the slack between coupled vehicles and may result in damage if not handled with caution. Last but not least, we've made improvements to graphics and user experience, so let's show you some of those. As you may have already noticed, we've fully redone the windshield raindrop graphics, now finally refracting light and impairing visibility when not white. Yet, they still retain all of their realistic physical behavior from before. To use custom difficulty presets in career mode, we no longer require you to unlock all the licenses using default presets. Rather, unlocking one of the few basic ones is enough. This is now also better explained in the game's interface. We've notably improved support for the Steam Deck platform, now having better controls and performance, and have reached out to Valve to update their compatibility review. As you might expect, tutorials and manuals have been greatly expanded too, to accommodate the new features. Please bear in mind that it might take some time for the localized versions to be updated. Finally, a lot of work has been done to improve the stability of the game and its performance. And those are the highlights of the new update B99. To recap, the main theme here that all this comes down to was to make deliveries less repetitive and more purposeful. With the new industries, routes, cargo types, locomotive restoration, gadgets, and simulation improvements, we hope to see you find dozens, if not hundreds more hours of fun to be had in the Rail Valley, while we continue to work on more significant improvements. For more detailed information on what's in this build, and there's a lot, please see the full changelog linked in the description. You'll notice that we've also moved the changelog online. We hope you'll enjoy Build 99 and are looking forward to seeing your locomotive builds and feedback. We'd like to give a big shout out to our beta testers and translators who have been tremendously helping finding issues in this but also previous builds. And we would also like to thank you, our community, for all your support over the years. You guys make this possible. Thank you so much. With that, we'll see you next time with more updates. Cheers!